Welcome. Today we're going to explore something that, honestly, we've all dreamed of at some point. Destroying our enemy without lifting a finger. Sounds good, right? But wait, before you imagine some magic trick or a master plan, I have a question for you. What if the most effective way to defeat your enemy was actually not to confront them? I know what you're thinking. That sounds a bit strange. But don't leave just yet, because in the next few minutes you'll discover 9 ways in which Stoic philosophy teaches us to disarm our opponents, not with violence or confrontation, but with wisdom, patience, and sometimes a touch of humor. By the end of this video, I guarantee you'll see life from a completely new perspective, and you might even find a way to improve your relationships, even with those who aren't exactly your favorite people. Let's get started. 1. Ignore the offenses. Let's begin with a simple yet incredibly powerful key: learning to ignore offenses. In daily life, we've all been targets of criticism, insults, or comments that made our blood boil. But have you ever stopped to think about why those words have so much power over you? The reality is that insults and criticisms only have the power we give them. Imagine someone throws a verbal dart at you. If you choose not to catch it, it simply won't harm you. It's as if you're covered by an invisible armor that protects your inner peace. This is one of the fundamental principles of Stoicism. What affects us is not what happens, but how we interpret what happens. Epictetus, a great Stoic philosopher, reminds us that it is not what happens that disturbs us, but how we perceive it. For example, imagine you're at work and a colleague makes a sarcastic comment about the quality of your last presentation. You have 2 options: let it affect you, feeling hurt and frustrated, or remember that their comment is just an opinion, not a fact. By choosing to ignore it, you strip that offense of all its power, and suddenly the verbal dart falls harmlessly to the ground. But how do you achieve this in practice? First, you need to recognize the power of the pause. When someone insults you, your first instinct might be to react immediately, perhaps with a sharp or defensive response. But if you take a moment to breathe and reflect, you'll realize that it's not necessary to respond in kind. That pause gives you control, and by deciding not to respond, you send a clear message: they can't touch you. This not only frustrates the aggressor, but also allows you to maintain your dignity and inner peace intact. Another useful technique is the visualization of insignificance. Imagine that insults are like dry leaves being carried away by the wind. You can see them flying around, but they have no weight or real substance. This mental exercise helps you keep the right perspective and not take offenses personally. Finally, reflect on the source of the offense. Often, people who criticize or insult do so from a place of insecurity or personal dissatisfaction. Understanding this allows you to see that their words are more a reflection of themselves than of you. This enables you to feel compassion instead of anger, thus disarming your enemy with a simple smile, or better yet, with indifference. The next time someone tries to provoke you, smile, take a deep breath and move on. That is your victory, and it's one of the most effective ways to destroy an enemy without fighting. Don't give them power over you. Keep your inner peace and watch as the offenses lose all their force. 2. Stay calm under pressure. Let's move on to the second key, which is equally essential in any Stoic's arsenal: staying calm under pressure. Have you ever felt tension and stress building up inside you like steam in a pressure cooker? And when you finally explode, the consequences are devastating for both you and those around you. The Stoics firmly believed in the importance of serenity, especially in times of adversity. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great emperors and Stoic philosophers, used to say, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." This quote encapsulates the essence of what it means to stay calm under pressure. To find your center and hold on to it, no matter what is happening around you. But how is this calm achieved? The answer lies in the constant practice of self-awareness and reflection. The Stoics dedicated time each day to reflect on their emotions and responses to challenges. This practice allowed them to anticipate their reactions and consequently maintain control when they found themselves in tense situations. For example, imagine you're in a high-stress situation at work. A deadline is approaching, your boss is demanding more than you can deliver, and it seems like everything is against you. Your first instinct might be to panic, followed by anger or frustration, but this is where Stoicism comes into play. Instead of giving in to the pressure, you stop, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what can I control in this situation? The answer, more often than we think, is that we can control much more than we believe, starting with our own mind. A powerful technique is negative visualization, a Stoic practice where you imagine the worst possible scenario, not to depress yourself, but to mentally prepare yourself. By doing this, the worst scenario no longer takes you by surprise, and you can face it with a calm and clear mind. For example, if your greatest fear is not meeting the deadline, imagine what would happen if that were the case. Would you lose your job? Damage your reputation? How could you recover? By confronting these thoughts in advance, you realize that although the consequences may be serious, they are manageable. This reduces your anxiety and allows you to act from a place of calm and control. Moreover, when you stay calm under pressure, not only do you benefit, but so do those around you. Your colleagues, friends, or family will notice your serenity, and many times they will feel inspired to do the same. In this way, you not only disarm your enemies, but also create a more balanced and harmonious environment. Remember, calm is an incredibly powerful force. The next time you feel the pressure building, stop, breathe, and remind yourself that you are in control. True strength is not shown in impulsive reactions, but in the ability to maintain serenity when everything else seems to be falling apart. 3. Don't worry about what you can't control. How many times have you found yourself worried about something that is completely out of your control? Maybe it's the traffic on your way to work, other people's opinions of you, or even the weather on the day of an important event. The truth is that if you think about it, many of our daily anxieties and worries are tied to things we simply cannot control. Stoicism places great emphasis on this idea. For the Stoics, the key to living a peaceful and fulfilling life is understanding the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. Seneca, one of the most influential philosophers of this school of thought, expressed it clearly. The greatest obstacle to living is expectation, which depends on tomorrow and neglects today. You waste what is in your power while worrying about what is not. To illustrate this, let's consider a daily example. Imagine you're organizing a major presentation at work. You've worked hard to ensure that every detail is in place. The research is done, the slides are ready, and you've practiced your speech several times. But as the day approaches, you start worrying about things that are completely out of your control. What if the projector doesn't work? What if the attendees are in a bad mood? What if someone asks a question you don't know how to answer? These concerns are completely understandable, but also useless. By worrying about things that are out of your control, you're draining energy and focus from the things you can actually manage, like your preparation, your confidence, and your attitude during the presentation. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, Stoicism invites you to concentrate on what is within your control and let go of the rest. This is where Stoicism's famous dichotomy of control comes into play, a concept that can transform the way you face life. This dichotomy teaches us that there are two categories of things in life, those we can control and those we cannot. The things we can control include our opinions, decisions, desires, and actions. Everything else, like other people's opinions, other people's behavior, or external events, is beyond our control and therefore not worth worrying about. Returning to the presentation example, instead of spending energy worrying about external factors, you can apply the dichotomy of control to focus on what truly matters: your performance, your mental preparation, and your ability to adapt to the unexpected. By doing this, you free yourself from anxiety and empower yourself to act with confidence and clarity. Another useful Stoic tool is the practice of detachment. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about anything, but that you learn to let go of attachment to outcomes that are beyond your control. For example, if you present your work with dedication and professionalism, you can be satisfied with your effort, regardless of how your audience reacts or any technical failure that may occur. This mindset not only gives you inner peace, but also allows you to act from a place of strength without the burden of fear or worry. In short, the next time you find yourself worrying about something you can't control, stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go. Focus on what you can control and watch as your perspective and tranquility improve significantly. This is one of Stoicism's greatest secrets for disarming your enemies, because by not allowing external circumstances to affect you, you become invulnerable. 4. Act with virtue. The fourth way to destroy your enemy without fighting is one of the most powerful and perhaps one of the most challenging. Always act with virtue. In a world where cunning or opportunism is often valued, choosing virtue may seem like a naive strategy, but let me tell you, there is nothing more disarming to an enemy than facing someone who always chooses to do the right thing, no matter the circumstances. What does acting with virtue mean in practice? For the Stoics, virtue is the essence of a well-lived life. It means acting with justice, courage, temperance, and wisdom. These are not just abstract concepts, they are practical guides for daily action. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Roman emperors and a devoted Stoic, wrote, "Do not think that there is only one way to act with virtue. There are many ways, and they are all within your reach." This is a reminder that no matter the situation, there is always a virtuous way to respond. Let's put this in a more relatable context. Suppose you're in a competitive work environment. There is a colleague who constantly seeks ways to sabotage your work, perhaps taking credit for your ideas or unfairly criticizing your efforts in front of others. At this point, you might feel tempted to strike back, to play the same dirty game and fight with the same weapons. But what would you achieve with that? You'd likely only intensify the rivalry and drag yourself into a level of conflict that could damage both your integrity and your peace of mind. Instead, Stoicism suggests you act with virtue. This means continuing to do your work to the best of your ability, being honest and fair in all your interactions, and not allowing the actions of others to divert you from your own path of integrity. Imagine your colleague's surprise when, instead of reacting to their provocations, you keep moving forward calmly, focusing on your responsibilities and contributing positively to the team. Over time, this behavior will disarm your enemy, because there is nothing more frustrating to an adversary than seeing their tactics have no effect on you. But acting with virtue does not mean being passive or allowing others to walk all over you. On the contrary, it means being firm in your principles and standing up for what is just, but doing so in a way that doesn't compromise your ethics or values. An example of this is handling an unjust situation at work. If you notice someone being treated unfairly, acting with virtue might mean speaking up to defend that person, but doing so in a respectful and constructive manner, seeking a solution that benefits everyone involved. Another crucial aspect of virtue is temperance, or the ability to maintain self-control in all situations. This is especially important when facing provocations or situations that could trigger a strong emotional response. Temperance allows you to act from a place of calm and rationality, rather than being carried away by anger or resentment. This emotional control not only strengthens you, but also disarms any adversary waiting for you to react impulsively. Finally, wisdom is the component that guides all other virtues. Being wise means understanding the consequences of your actions, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. It means thinking before acting and considering how your decisions affect not only you, but also others. When you act with wisdom, you build a reputation for integrity and reliability that is difficult to attack. Enemies may try to discredit you, but when you have a consistent history of acting with virtue, their attacks are likely to fall on deaf ears. Acting with virtue is a powerful strategy because it is based on consistency and internal coherence. When you live according to your values, you create an internal fortress that is almost impossible to penetrate. Enemies may try to sway you, but they cannot force you to compromise your principles. And in that sense, the greatest triumph you can achieve is not in defeating your enemy, but in remaining steadfast in your virtue, no matter what. 5. Control your desires. The next key Stoicism offers us to disarm our enemies is the control of desires. This may seem like a simple matter, but it is one of the deepest and most challenging aspects of this philosophy. In our society, we are constantly bombarded by messages that incite us to desire more. More money, more recognition, more power. But what happens when we let those desires control us instead of controlling them? The Stoics understood that excessive desire is one of the greatest sources of human suffering. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic masters, reminds us, freedom is not in doing what you want, but in not wanting to do what you shouldn't. This is a key distinction. True freedom, according to Stoicism, is not found in obtaining everything we desire, but in freeing ourselves from the need to desire more than we truly need. To understand how this helps us disarm our enemies, let's consider a daily example. Imagine you're in an environment where competition is fierce, like in a company or an academic institution. You might feel the desire to be recognized, to be the best, to surpass everyone else. This desire, if unchecked, can lead you to behave selfishly, to take shortcuts, or even to harm others in your pursuit of success. But what happens when you choose to control that desire? By moderating your desires, you realize that you don't need external validation to feel satisfied. This realization is incredibly powerful because it makes you less susceptible to external manipulations. When you're not hungry for recognition or power, your enemies have nothing with which to tempt or blackmail you. In fact, many times those who seek to manipulate others do so by exploiting their deepest desires. But if those desires don't control you, you're practically immune to those attempts. Controlling your desires also allows you to focus on what truly matters. Instead of wasting your energy pursuing things you may not even need, you can concentrate on your principles, your relationships, and your personal growth. This focus not only makes you stronger internally, but also makes you much harder to defeat, because when your enemy sees that you have no weak points in the form of unchecked desires, they realize they have no foothold to attack you. One way to practice the control of desires is through strategic abstinence, a Stoic exercise that involves temporarily giving up certain pleasures or comforts to strengthen your self-discipline. For example, you might decide not to buy a new device that you don't really need or to forego a luxurious meal. Not because these pleasures are bad in themselves, but because it helps you remember that you can live without them. This type of practice strengthens your willpower and teaches you not to be a slave to your desires. Another aspect of controlling desires is moderation in enjoyment. It's not about living a life of deprivation, but about enjoying what you have without letting that enjoyment turn into an unhealthy attachment. For example, if you enjoy wine, have a glass, but avoid falling into excess that can lead to a lack of control. The Stoics believed in moderate enjoyment as a way to maintain balance and avoid being dominated by pleasures. Finally, controlling desires connects with the idea of living in accordance with nature, a central concept in Stoicism. Living in accordance with nature means recognizing what our real needs are as human beings and distinguishing them from the superficial desires that often distract us. When you align yourself with what is truly essential to you, you realize that many of the things you thought you needed aren't as important as they seemed. This approach not only brings you inner peace, but also makes you less vulnerable to manipulation and your enemy's tactics. In summary, controlling your desires is an essential strategy for disarming your enemies because it makes you someone who is difficult to influence or intimidate. When you're not entangled in a web of unfulfilled desires, you're free, and that freedom is one of the most powerful weapons you can have. 6. Practice gratitude. The sixth way to disarm your enemies without fighting is perhaps one of the most underestimated: practicing gratitude. In a world that constantly pushes us to want more and to compare ourselves to others, gratitude may seem like a simple concept, but in reality, it is an incredibly powerful tool that changes your perspective and therefore your life. The Stoics valued gratitude as a means to live a life in harmony with nature and with oneself. According to Seneca, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. This thought underscores that true wealth is not measured by the number of goods or achievements we possess, but by our ability to appreciate what we already have. Practicing gratitude helps us focus our attention on the abundance that already exists in our lives, instead of dwelling on what we lack. But how exactly can gratitude disarm an enemy? The answer lies in how gratitude affects your mindset and approach. Imagine you're in a situation where someone tries to make you feel less than, perhaps by criticizing your achievements or comparing you unfavorably to others. Instead of falling into the trap of insecurity or envy, you can counter those feelings by practicing gratitude. By remembering and valuing everything you've accomplished, everything you have, and all the blessings in your life, you make yourself immune to attempts to belittle you. A concrete example might be this: you're at a family gathering, and a relative begins to brag about their recent successes, making comments that seem designed to make you feel inferior. Instead of feeling bad or resentful, you decide to focus on what you have to be grateful for: your health, your job, your relationships, or even the small moments of happiness in your daily life. This gratitude not only helps you stay at peace, but also neutralizes any attempt by your enemy to make you feel less. Because when you're genuinely grateful, it's hard to feel threatened or envious. Gratitude also has a powerful effect on interpersonal relationships. When you show gratitude towards others, you create a positive environment that is difficult to attack. Enemies who try to sow discord or negativity will find themselves facing a wall of positivity and appreciation, which often disarms them or makes them reconsider their tactics. Furthermore, gratitude fosters empathy and understanding, which can help resolve conflicts before they escalate. An effective practice of gratitude is to keep a gratitude journal, where each day you write down at least 3 things you're grateful for. These don't have to be big things. In fact, it's often the smallest details that have the greatest impact. For example, you might be grateful for a pleasant conversation you had with a friend, for the sun shining on a cold day, or for a delicious meal you enjoyed. By making gratitude a daily habit, you train your mind to focus on the positive, which in turn strengthens you emotionally and makes you less vulnerable to negative influences. Another aspect of gratitude is the recognition of impermanence. The Stoics understood that everything in life is temporary, including our possessions, our relationships, and even our own existence. By appreciating what we have in the present, we prepare to accept inevitable changes without fear or resentment. This understanding frees us from excessive attachment and allows us to live with greater freedom and tranquility. Finally, gratitude has a direct impact on your physical and mental well-being. Numerous studies have shown that people who regularly practice gratitude experience less stress, sleep better, and have a greater sense of overall well-being. This well-being makes you more resilient to emotional and psychological attacks because you are in a more balanced and positive mental state. In summary, practicing gratitude is one of the most effective ways to disarm an enemy because it anchors you in the reality of your own blessings and achievements instead of allowing yourself to be dragged down by negativity or envy. By being grateful, you become a difficult adversary to bring down because your inner strength is based on a deep sense of satisfaction and peace. 7. Don't take anything personally. The seventh Stoic key to disarming your enemies is learning not to take anything personally. This principle, although seemingly simple in theory, can be one of the most difficult to apply in daily life. However, it is a skill that, once mastered, offers incredible protection against external aggression and manipulation. Marcus Aurelius, in his Reflections, reminds us, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This thought invites us to consider that other people's actions and words are colored by their own experiences, emotions, and prejudices. Rarely do they have anything to do with us, and almost always they reflect more about themselves. To understand this better, let's consider a daily example. Suppose you're in a work meeting and you make a suggestion. One of your colleagues, perhaps out of insecurity or competitiveness, responds with a sarcastic comment, implying that your idea is not viable. Your first reaction might be to feel attacked or belittled, which is natural. However, if you can remember that their comment is more a reflection of their own insecurity or need to assert themselves, and not a personal attack on you, you can handle the situation with much more calmness and objectivity. This approach not only protects you emotionally, but also puts you in a position of power. By not reacting impulsively or from a place of hurt, you can respond more rationally and constructively. Perhaps you could simply ignore the comment, or you could respond in a way that reaffirms your point of view without falling into the trap of confrontation. This not only disarms your colleague, but also allows you to maintain your dignity and focus on what truly matters. Additionally, by not taking things personally, you become less susceptible to others' manipulative tactics. Often, people try to provoke you or make you feel bad precisely because they want to see an emotional reaction from you. If you don't give them that satisfaction, you become a difficult target. For example, if someone tries to make you feel guilty for something that is not your responsibility, and you realize that their reproach has more to do with their own frustrations than with something you've actually done, you can avoid feeling trapped in their game. A practical exercise for developing this skill is cognitive separation. When someone criticizes or attacks you, instead of reacting immediately, take a moment to ask yourself, does this really have to do with me, or is it more about the other person? This pause allows you to separate your identity from the situation and evaluate it more objectively. Over time, this practice becomes second nature, allowing you to navigate potentially conflictive situations with greater ease and grace. Another important aspect is positive self-talk. Often we take things personally because we already have insecurities or internal doubts that external criticism touches on. By developing a more positive and affirming internal dialogue, you make yourself less vulnerable to external criticism. For example, if someone questions your ability to perform a task, instead of letting their comment affect you, you could remind yourself of all the times you've successfully completed similar tasks. This internal reinforcement acts as a shield against negative influences. Finally, not taking things personally also involves a level of empathy and understanding towards others. By recognizing that we are all dealing with our own internal struggles, it becomes easier not to see others' actions as deliberate attacks. This not only helps you stay calm, but can also transform your interactions, turning potential conflicts into opportunities for understanding and collaboration. In summary, when you learn not to take anything personally, you realize you have much more control over your reactions and emotions than you thought. It makes you less vulnerable to external attacks and more capable of handling any situation with dignity and wisdom. This is one of the most powerful weapons you can have in your Stoic arsenal because it allows you to maintain your inner peace no matter what happens around you. 8. Learn from your enemies. The 8th Stoic key is one that may seem counterintuitive at first, but is incredibly valuable: learning from your enemies. In life, it's natural to see our adversaries as obstacles or threats, but Stoicism invites us to change that perspective. Instead of viewing enemies as forces to be defeated or avoided, we can see them as teachers who offer valuable lessons. Seneca, a great Stoic philosopher, said, "Consider as enemies only those from whom you can learn nothing." This quote suggests that even the most difficult people in our lives have something to teach us, whether it's about our own weaknesses, areas for improvement, or even the world around us. When you adopt this mindset, you transform your relationship with your enemies, turning it into an opportunity for personal growth. To understand this better, let's consider an example. Suppose there's someone at your workplace who seems to be in constant competition with you. Maybe this colleague always tries to outdo your achievements, criticizes you in meetings, or makes derogatory comments about your work. It's easy to see this person as an enemy who needs to be defeated. But what if, instead of that, you decided to learn from this person? First, you could observe their methods and strategies. What does this person do that allows them to advance in their career or gain the approval of others? By observing your enemy with an open mind, you might discover that there are skills or tactics you could adopt to improve your own performance. Perhaps this person is very good at presenting themselves or has an exceptional ability to connect with key people in the company. Instead of resenting them, you can learn from their example and apply those lessons to your own work. Additionally, your enemies often highlight your own weaknesses. For example, if you realize you feel threatened or insecure when this person succeeds, that could be a sign that you need to work on your own confidence or self-image. By identifying these areas for improvement, you can begin to strengthen them, which not only makes you more resilient to your enemy's attacks, but also turns you into a stronger, more self-assured version of yourself. Another way enemies can be teachers is by helping you practice patience and resilience. Facing adversity, especially when it comes in the form of difficult people, is an excellent way to develop these virtues. For example, if someone in your life is constantly challenging or testing you, you can see this as an opportunity to strengthen your patience, learn to handle conflict constructively, and develop greater emotional resilience. These are skills that not only benefit you in specific situations, but also prepare you to face any adversity in life with greater strength. Moreover, learning from your enemies also involves learning to see things from their perspective. By trying to understand why someone acts the way they do, you can gain a more complete and nuanced view of the situation. Perhaps you realize that their behavior is due to their own insecurities or external pressures that you didn't know about. This kind of understanding can not only disarm your enemy, but also lead to a peaceful resolution of the conflict. Finally, by learning from your enemies, you develop a continuous growth mindset. Instead of seeing conflicts as mere obstacles, you see them as opportunities to learn and improve. This mindset makes you more adaptable, more resilient, and less likely to get stuck in negative or destructive thought patterns. You realize that every adversary you face has the potential to teach you something new, and by adopting this perspective, you become someone difficult to defeat. In summary, learning from your enemies is a powerful strategy because it allows you to transform conflict into an opportunity for growth. Instead of seeing your adversaries as threats, you see them as teachers who can help you improve. This mindset not only disarms your enemies, but also strengthens you in ways you may not have imagined. So the next time you face an adversary, instead of resisting them, ask yourself, what can I learn from this person? The answer might surprise and empower you in ways you never considered. 9. Forgive and move on. Finally, we come to the 9th and last key to disarming your enemies without fighting. Forgive and move on. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful and liberating acts you can perform, not only for others, but also for yourself. However, it is also one of the most difficult, especially when we feel deeply hurt or betrayed. But Stoicism teaches us that forgiveness is not just an act of kindness, but a strategy of self-preservation and strength. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, offers a profound insight into forgiveness. The best way to avenge yourself is not to become like the one who has wronged you. This quote underscores a fundamental truth. When you choose not to forgive, you remain chained to the past, to the wound, and in a way, you become like the person who harmed you. On the other hand, when you choose to forgive, you free yourself from those chains and allow your life to move forward without the weight of resentment. To better understand how forgiveness can disarm an enemy, let's consider a concrete example. Imagine you've been betrayed by a close friend. Maybe you shared something in confidence, and this friend disclosed it, causing you shame and pain. The first instinct, understandably, might be to hold a grudge, perhaps even seek revenge or cut off all contact with that person. But resentment is a heavy burden that you carry with you, affecting your emotional and mental well-being. Forgiveness, on the other hand, allows you to release that burden. This doesn't mean you should forget what happened or allow the person to harm you again. Forgiveness can include setting clear boundaries to protect yourself. But by forgiving, you choose not to let the past control your present and future. This disarms your enemy because resentment no longer has power over you. By forgiving, you regain your inner peace and allow yourself to move on to new experiences and relationships, free from the shadow of betrayal. The act of forgiveness also has a profound effect on your mental and physical health. Numerous studies have shown that people who practice forgiveness experience less stress, fewer symptoms of depression, and better cardiovascular health. Resentment, on the other hand, has been linked to high levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, which can have harmful long-term effects on the body. By forgiving, you free yourself not only emotionally, but also physically from the toxic effects of resentment. Another reason forgiveness is so powerful is that it allows you to regain control of your life. When you hold on to a grudge, you give power to the person who wronged you. They continue to influence your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. By forgiving, you take that power back. You say, in essence, you no longer have control over me or my happiness. This is an act of empowerment that completely disarms any enemy, because there is nothing more frustrating to someone who tries to harm you than seeing that they no longer have power over you. Forgiveness also extends to yourself. Many times, we are our worst critics, carrying guilt and regret for past mistakes. Stoicism teaches us that everyone makes mistakes, and what matters is learning from them, not punishing ourselves indefinitely. By practicing self-forgiveness, you free yourself from the burden of the past and allow yourself to grow and move on. This self-forgiveness is crucial to maintaining your inner peace and emotional well-being. Forgiving does not mean that you must reconcile with those who have harmed you, although in some cases that might also be an option. Forgiveness is primarily for you, for your liberation and peace. It means letting go of resentment, stopping wishing that things were different, and accepting what has happened as part of your life experience. By doing this, you allow the past to remain in the past and open yourself to a brighter future full of possibilities. In summary, forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools you have to disarm an enemy because it frees you from the control they may have had over you through resentment or hatred. By forgiving, you choose peace over conflict, freedom over emotional slavery, and growth over stagnation. This is the true victory. A victory that not only benefits you, but also transforms the power dynamics in any conflict you find yourself in. So, the next time you face the difficult decision to forgive, remember that by doing so, you are choosing your own peace and well-being above all else. And there you have it, 9 powerful ways to destroy your enemy without fighting. Each of these keys not only helps you manage conflicts better, but also teaches you to live a fuller life in peace with yourself. Remember that true strength is not in dominating others, but in mastering yourself. The Stoics teach us that the greatest enemy is not the one outside, but the one we carry within, our uncontrolled emotions, our fears, and our desires. By applying these keys in your daily life, you will not only disarm your enemies, but also become a stronger and more balanced person. So, what are you waiting for? Start putting these teachings into practice today.